Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. Is sunlight breathing? A strange question, an uncommon question. But I feel there's a truth to that sentence. I feel that we human beings, in wondering about the relationship of light and our breath, it's as if who is breathing? We need light to see. We need light to see. That means I could say, imagine there was no light, but somehow creatures emerged. Now, it's highly probable without light creatures emerging, but let us say there were creatures, all the creatures on the planet, they didn't have access to light. You were born without having access to the senses. This is all sensory perception, thinking of. I mean, immediately the visual sense for the topic, but you can see all the senses in it as if, or here, let me just say it. Let's say you didn't have the visual sense. There are people on this planet who are like that. And so, what is the point of it? Is that you don't know what is breathing. And that's the cool thing. When our eyes are open, we know what's here, we can see it. But if you were to close your eyes, just whoever's listening, you can close your eyes right now. You have memories of light, but there is no light. You see, sometimes when I close my eyes, it's like I'm inside a room. It's phenomenal. It's like when it comes to speech and sight, we can open and close these channels of perception, these canals of perception. But for example, the ear, the person can't. The nose, you can hold your nose or try closing it, but it doesn't completely. And if a person pays attention to the circulation of the breath, I will tell you, it's as if like the the nose, I don't know how to say this, the nose is designed to inhale, the mouth is designed to exhale. So when you inhale from your nose and then exhale, it's as if anyways, there's a lot we can say about the breath. In certain cultures, in yogic thought, we have the term prana, which meant the air we breathe is the life force. Sometimes I feel um, the breath is information. I feel light is information. As things enter the body, I mean, think about it. A light beam hits an object and it reflects back into our eyes. I mean, it's phenomenal when you think about it. That light is sticky. It's as if light hits something. I mean, I personally feel in my own, I could tell you I've seen too many geometrical patterns on coffee cups left in the sunlight to feel light is just providing the access. Light is the information, because light is, you can say, it's the smallest energy carrier system. I feel light is like a Facebook timeline. I feel light has a memory, but not a memory that's conscious, just a memory of imprints on it. There is a unique geometry to light. It's like a geometrical higher law in the darkness of the cosmos. I will tell you, really, when you look at the human being, we're sensory based, at least our outer realms. Now, not a lot of people even know there is such a thing called as inner realms. They consider that there is like a thought of themselves, which is a subject, but they don't feel that subject is in a world. We feel we're a subject that is in the outer world, in the object based world. I'm saying, the I am is saying, um, it's not complete. It's not a perfect system. It's like you've opened the hood of a car. Now imagine you open the hood of a car. Now this hood of the car, the engine goes down, imagine 10 levels into the ground. And you're like, how is this possible? You close the engine, you look down, and you see the bottom of the car is separate from the earth. But when you open up the engine of the car, imagine it's this endless engine. Just this endless vertical engine, like an elevator of an engine, you know? If we were all a following animal only, we would not care about the new. If it was enough following something and feeling that's life, then either the person is selling themselves short or they perceive life as short and they have to hold on to something before their eyes change. Really, we are in the game of changing eyes. I can't tell you how many times my eyes have changed. My view on things have changed. My view on people have changed. There was a time I would actually consider the notion of enemies. Do you know? Then I realized all my enemies had friends. Do you know? So it's like this view that it's like the fastest way to get rid of an obstacle is to make it your friend. What does that mean? That means it's like the easiest way. I don't know who said it. Some guy said it. And some wise person in history has said this. It's like the easiest way to get rid of an enemy is to make them your friend. Because what is the whole point about friendship or resistance between people? It's all about how acceptable it is to be. That's it. The reason there is a lot of, you can say, um, artificial expressions in society of people is because they feel they have to be in some way for their survival. In this world we're living in, people look at objects first, then they wonder about the subject. Trust me, in this life, I've been in strange situations where I have been shunned, I have been reduced in crowds, but the person didn't know who I was. Do you see? There's something incredible about someone not knowing who you are and them saying something to you that can never touch you. It can never touch you. You see, the only people we get hurt by are the people we care about. If you don't care about someone, if they don't do something, will you get upset? You see, no. People care about their own children. Why is that? Because it's the most immediate thing that is real to them. If people suddenly realize their great 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 grandchildren were as real to them as their children, if they really love their great great grandchildren, people wouldn't act like separate families. We would act like a species that finally found a way to look at life in a straight way, in this curved picture of endless chaos, order. It's like, give me a break, chaos and order. How long are you going to be spinning energy as an incarnating soul? You know? You see, there is this thing I'll tell you this. One night I engaged the concept of religion in such a strange way. It wasn't during these talks, it was just in my own inner realms, you know. I'll tell you, sometimes I have this habit of like looking at something that's super meaningless, but I'm not actually looking at that thing in the outer realms. Sometimes I could be looking, I'll give you an example. Like I could be looking outside of a window, but actually I'm not seeing anything out. I do see things outside, but I'm seeing what's in my inner realms. That means the mind gives you an access to perceive events that have already taken place or events that haven't taken place which can probabilistically happen. So you see, the mind is a multidimensional phenomenon. Behind your eyes, you have known nothing else other than being a multidimensional being. In front of your eyes, you are an object which requires to go with the program of biology. It is important. You see, I realize we are on an island. There is no right and wrong when everybody's on an island. First thing is, the species has to realize we know nothing. When we know nothing, then we can know again. If we think we know things in a certain way and results are not happening, changes are not happening, most likely we don't know. And life works in such unique ways, guys. Sometimes when you live beyond thought, as if there is no thought in the moment, it's just an direct event happening. That's really how there was a time my psychology would create suffering, but you suffer until you actually do something yourself. Anything, if you notice, anything most people suffer from is something they can't do. The person doesn't have money for food, they suffer. They can't get food, they suffer. The person can't get a place, they suffer. Do you see? It's all action oriented, our suffering. If we realize this, there's literally nothing to be a concept in the existence of the moment. You see, it's the sensitivity. It's like existential life sensitivity and experiential life sensitivity. Now, both of these, the mistakes has been, these poor souls. I was like really looking at Vedic thought, and I'm like, oh my God, of course they had to say not this, not this, not this. Because it's like we are treating two dimensions as if they're one. And then we're wondering, hey, is there something else going on? It's as if, you know what it is? It's as if you're at a house party, but there's multiple floors to this house party, you know? Or you're at a museum and you've seen one floor of the museum and you're about to leave and you're like, wait, something feels off. Then you realize there's the second floor of the museum and you realize everybody's about to leave the museum because they're tired and they don't want to go up the stairs, and you just run to see everything before everybody leaves the museum. That's kind of it. This has been this life. Really, at first you have expectations on the ideological character, the character in the story. But after a point, you don't want to be the character of your own story. I'm telling you, the thing about human behavior is that we know our own story. We know ourselves. That's why we get bored from ourselves, and then our interest goes to others. People are different in the sense that different alphabets find them. And these are not alphabets of a language like the English language or the Farsi language. It's the alphabet of information, of how you have learned in this life to classify, categorize, and contain information. They don't teach that. They don't teach that here, in the educational systems. They teach you classifications. They don't teach you how it's being done. Because if you understood how knowledge is being done, it is literally like, you can say, how we discovered fire. I personally feel like fire wasn't, it was something where probably lightning hit a branch of a tree, that branch fell. This caveman was too oblivious to understand what fire and heat was. It just held the branch, and it took the branch and threw it on a bush. And then all the other cavemen came and took branches of that burning bush, and the fire continued or something. Honestly, I don't know. I don't feel actually fire is something that it requires an awareness outside of self. The thing about the caveman is that it's like they were like animal humans. It's very fascinating. The most remarkable thing about evolution is that it's been in the making for a while. That means this was something of course, there's many views. I walk in a different hallway than Richard Dawkins, but I will tell you, he said one thing that was very remarkable about evolution. Richard Dawkins is an evolutionary biologist, but he's also like an extremely militant atheist, you know. But I think it's good, it's literally an anti-theist needs to be as militant as the theist, you know, only to realize they're both wrong. The spiritual guy's just in the back. Let these fools fight. I'm just going to enjoy the beautiful sun on the grass, What I'm trying to say is Richard Dawkins said something very profound about evolution when it comes to evolution. He said the universe has had a lot of time. Because one of the questions people ask is, why are there apes around when we evolved? How are apes still apes? And that's the thing. From an evolutionary biological standpoint, it was ape plus something else. We have, like, literally, just like how there's so many broken families around the world where the father is missing, similarly, it's like Mother Earth and Father Sky, as mythology has those archetypes. We don't know what Father Sky, where Father Sky is. That means the earth is object based, but the sky, it is not bound. That means we are the creation of the infinite and the void. We are the child of infinity and the void. My mind is not a mind. I have to use that word here. I have to give it names here. It is not a name. It's not something you can name. It's the generator of names. It's the presence of the seer before the seen has been contained. So is sunlight breathing? Well, we breathe, and the idea of we need sunlight as a precondition to know. Technically, subjectively, we are breathing sunlight. We are sunlight that's breathing. My subjective existence to myself is based on my senses, and most immediately my visual senses. Now, there is also, like, I've closed my eyes and I've listened with my ears. There was a time I didn't like listening. I felt it was too slow. I felt like, okay, just see information, run, like something like that. But then I realized I was very blessed to have this friend where there came this time where his name was Gabriel and his brother, I forget his brother's name. And we went camping and we were around this campfire, he had this older brother who was, they were both very smart people. And I remember I was there, I had this notebook, I was writing something around the campfire, and they were having a conversation, and I was just, as I was writing something in my notebook, I was hearing them. I was listening to them. And they were talking about listening. And I'll never forget it, that my friend Gabriel, he looked at his brother and he's like, it's incredible how much information you get from just listening. And his brother turned around to Gabriel and he was like, yeah. And I was there. Not part of the, like, I was just writing, I was in my own zone, but I heard what they said. And it was so true that I realized I had been more focused on expression. This is, by the way, years ago. Like this listening thing I'm telling you, this clicked in for me before 2014. You know? But I'm telling you, when it clicked that I realized, wow, this is a beautiful dimension of access to information. So then I started enjoying listening. You know, a lot of people hear music, but they don't hear it. They don't hear it like Beethoven, you know? It takes, it's like you gotta create music to be able to even hear it like Beethoven, I would say. Some things you will never understand unless you reinvent the wheel. That means if you want to build another type of a wheel, yeah, reinvent the wheel. If you want to build something else other than a wheel, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You know? And that was the thing, that listening, that kind of no longer it being meditation. What meditation? You're a creature you've opened your eyes on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Just as quickly as possible, get to see what this technology you're in is. That's it. I don't know what people are doing, you know, in the self-help industry like I'll tell you this. Like I do understand what it is. I do understand that there's goodness there, but I'm telling you, it's not self-help when it's someone else's words. It should be mirror help. We see reflections of the own, like here's the cool thing. This is how I experienced it, at least when I really started listening. That when you listen to a sentence that has been generated from another unknown mind, it allows everything you know to be all your experiential archive of different experiences you've had, pretty much your archive of memories can be realigned to generate meaning. That means, what are we doing when we're speaking? You know, if you understand something on the simplest level, then its complexity won't overwhelm you. Anything in my life I get to where it's complex, I'm like, okay, it's too complex. Literally, it's too complex for me to understand it. I got to look at it in a simpler way. Do you know? And you take one step back. And right when you think this is a shuffling tutorial, you see, no, it's all about like awareness. That's life. Your energy, attention. The energy has a potential through attention to receive specific information. It's like, I don't know how many people have seen this. If you look at an insect like an ant up close, what you see is the ant, the creature goes like it has this, all creatures have an antenna. They have some sort of surveillance of their movement. Okay? So the creature, even if it's an insect or a bird or whatever level you want to see, the insect goes and it tastes, it engages the environment, sees the information, compares it according to its nature. If it's not for it, it moves on. It's like if you put like fast food sometimes in front of animals, you know, or in some sort of food that an animal doesn't eat. Do you know? I don't know. Let's say let's say a dog comes near you and you throw lettuce. The dog's gonna smell the lettuce and be like, "What is this crap?" You know, and just leave. The dog smells it and then leaves. You know, it's as if, you see, we are only using our visual sense as the focal point of realism. Now, in regards to what we see happened where there was object worship, then we went on to subject worship. Now, it's in regards to, I don't know. It's like we noticed there was something more than an object here. Now we've noticed there's something more than a subject here. Now we're realizing what is here is the whole here and now. That's what collective intelligence means. That means if you don't have an ability to be a simple person, then you don't understand what collectivity means. It's the simplest common denominator within every energetic uh, 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 chess piece on the chessboard, on nature's chessboard. So we are a relationship of an object that requires light to be a subject to itself, and we also need air before we can have the light in. That means technically air is more important than light. There's this concept called Mahasamadhi. It means the great Samadhi. And Samadhi, I would just simplify for people. There's various ways to speak about it. Samadhi is when there is an inseparability between every category that you have thought that needs to move at a different speed than the rest. Sometimes I feel the mystical insight is that you're stopping the speed of all programs. Literally, those yogis that would meditate in caves a lot, they would go in there like a phone with a bunch of applications open. One by one, they would close the applications. Eventually, there would be no application on the phone, open in the phone, and the pure energy of the body would be present. That means it's the biggest question. Mind over matter or matter over mind? Is mind the bigger onion layer and matter inside this onion layer? Or is matter the bigger onion layer and mind inside it? Mainstream thinks matter is the bigger onion layer. On this planet, we are worshiping objects, but now through subjects, just to make it a bit more cool, you know? So that's what I'm saying. We eventually went to a point where first we were looking at the relationship of an object, but no, now it has to be the relationship of a subject. This was something that scared me a little. It scared me because it was something that it's in our conditioning. Every person has the potential to be great at something, you know? But I'm telling you, the issue is that the conditioning limits the options accessible by the person not realizing there are better options. So sometimes you need to be patient just to see what else you can do. I'll give you an example. I mean, sometimes if the person knows, you speak. But if you don't know, then it becomes a situation where the person just waits. That means you don't know. It's like I have become very comfortable with silence and stillness. If there was literally like, you can say, like I would say, I can sit somewhere without being a person, and so there is no time. When there is no time, you know what happens? You become the non-dual witness of the whole moment. Like imagine there's a glass sphere around you, you're in the center. Right now, you are only experiencing the center of the glass sphere, then you experience the whole glass sphere. So when you are your moment, there is no thought, you know? And it's not that there is no thought, a different mind starts working. A different mind of your own being. You start noticing the universal mind in everything. You know what it's like? It's like you suddenly go back to your every memory in your childhood up to this moment, you know, all your memories, and you suddenly notice all the involuntary, natural continuations that happened in your moment. And you'll suddenly see what I mean by this collective mind. You know what it is? We are like an attributeless collective being that has amnesia in perceiving that it is an attribute filled temporary cycle. That means we are multidimensional. The era of the multidimensional has begun. Back in the day, our ancestors were multidimensional, but they were multidimensional in strict, specific, revelatory ways. For example, in religion, religion is a multidimensional framework. I mean, all the religions are way more multidimensional than just a pure materialistic singular realm, space-time continuum. The whole point of religion was that it's like you're living in this life, not for this life, for the next life, for another narrative. So technically, religious people are living in the world, but they're not living in the world for the world. They're living in the world. They're living for something outside of the world, but while they're in the world. That's the unique algorithm of the religious mind. That it's as if you are considering something there more being there, because something more is there. You can't just not do anything, you know. There's the story of this Cherokee, this missionary priest back in the day, like, you know, like those priests that would go and share the truth. So what happens is this priest goes to this one town which their recently native people have started integrating into more of a Western civilization, of course, forcefully. Now what happens is there's a Cherokee person in this town, and this priest sees, I gotta go give the message of truth to this person. And what happens is the priest goes to the person and says, you have to believe in uh, what, what is the proper language? You have to renounce yourself onto Christ as the ultimate, or you will suffer, something like that. Pretty much, you will go to hell, you know? And the guy suddenly thinks, in this story, this is a story I'm telling you, the guy suddenly thinks, and he's like, wait a minute, do children go to hell if there's heaven and hell? The Cherokee person's never like heard it like that. Heaven and hell. A place of eternal damnation, eternal, and a place of eternal glory. The Cherokee person says, do children go to hell? Children, young children. And the person says, no. The priest says, no, buddy, young children don't go to hell because they're too innocent. You know, they don't know any better. They don't know any better to make a decision. They don't know. That's why they don't go to hell. And then the Cherokee looks at the priest, he gets mad, and he says, then why did you tell me about heaven and hell? If when you don't know, you don't go to hell. And of course, there's so many denominations to religion, guys. I mean, keep in mind, there isn't like there isn't one kind of Christianity, you know, I would say, because nobody has the same eyes to perceive the same religion. We may perceive the same event, accept the same event. I'm telling you, I was raised in Iran for some time. My background's from Iran. And there is this whole religious vibe everywhere. Of course, Iran is a country where church and state haven't separated, you know? So it's a very strange thing where, like, an ideology from a long time ago is governing a nation now. It's like the person living with their opinions when they were 6 years old. You know, it's not that it's wrong. They could have had the right opinion when they were 6 years old, but the narrative, the structure, the lens of perception is that. And the issue is that when the child is young, you are emotionally accepting the world. You're not articulating the world. A children don't they? It's like a lot of intelligence is emotional. Most people function through emotional intelligence because it becomes too slow if you want to break everything up and analyze it like a machine. It just becomes too slow. The emotion has probability. What does that mean? That means the person is doing something, then the person suddenly stops for a second, thinks about, suddenly they get an idea of a better way they can do it, and they suddenly, it's like no longer they need to do it. You know, the probability occurred, a better model for engagement and expression in the outer realms occurred. Now the person can implement. What I'm trying to say is it's language. And language is a finger pointing to the truth, therefore the language can't be the truth. But we're trying to find our truth in language, you see? It's like we're trying to build a snowman, not realizing the sun is out and it's melting. That means there are truths. I would say there's two types of truths, let's say. There's melting truths and there's regular truths, truths that don't melt. Like, for example, when it comes to space, it is a truth that doesn't melt. It has no content as a position of validity to change. But the truth of an object, the truth of a candle, I mean, what can I tell you? It's going to burn out someday. That's the whole point of it. We're all like light bulbs that are just being kept on 24 hours. Even when we're asleep, the existence is still functioning. And gravity is the issue. I am telling you, like, if like one technology I would say that could be right up there close, in these talks of mine, I declare sky cities being the most important technology, one of the most important, the most primary technology for the future generations to focus on, building sky cities. But I would say that, of course, the world gifts itself with many things. That means, you know what it always, nature feels like? Nature feels like as if I'm new to the game, but people who've been playing the game already know what they're doing. But it's not people, it's the whole world event. You know, from an angle, I could never understand why human beings have been fighting over the shape of truth. There's so many different shapes. There's so many different colors. There's so many different just ways the attention can perceive the moment that what we are fighting over is temporary emotion of satisfaction. That means think about it right now. If everybody was an immortal being, nobody was going to die, imagine. Physically. You know, you would endlessly change, let's say, or I don't know. I mean, that becomes a bit complex. But let me say it like this, like you're immortal, you don't die. Or let's say you're an eternal being. There is no such thing as death. What would you do? For me, creation is the only thing the eternal can do. That's the biggest sign that eternity is active because the temporary is happening. That means if the temporary was not happening, then instantly I would say there's no eternal, no eternity, because there's no reference for it to consider it. But because we're telling ourselves the story that we're these just meaningless atoms in space, that we're hallucinating our individualism. I feel like many materialists and the secular perspective has not understood the chaos of being nothing in nothing. There is a chaos to it because we are conditioned to be a character in a story. That means the biggest philosophical question is how long can we be a character in a story? And is the character even separate from the world of the story? Light is us. Every person I have called in this life an enemy, a friend or foe, it has all been light in my eyes. There was a reason the shaman. People think the shaman was the townspeople told the shaman. Terence McKenna spoke about the shaman as a person who the people of the town were like, "You're uncommon, so go live in the corner of the town by the side of the mountain." You know. But I will tell you, no, 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 no. The shaman was just an explorer. You see, that's the issue with wanting to continue in accordance to the past. You want to keep a picture alive when the world when life is built like a film. It doesn't matter what one moment means. You know, it's like we create this thing in our in our cultures where we become super sensitive to what language means in one moment. You know, somebody like it's like somebody could say, you know, um, top hats are bad. Imagine we're back in the day, you know, when Charles Dickens was at the peak of his career. Let us say we were there in the streets of London as a small, like, what do you call it, newspaper uh, uh, selling kid, you know? Like if I show you a picture of kids, like people think about like how tough. Like let me tell you, people are depressed today. Let me show you a picture of kids in London. I'm looking for the picture, guys. Hold on. Oh my god. All right, guys. I can't find the specific picture, but it was pretty much an Oliver Twist kind of lifestyle they had. There we go. I found a picture. This picture is. I don't know where this is from, but the picture is going to show you like how life used to be for some human beings. Like the patience these kids had, if these kids had a time machine and a time traveler came and like this kid could somehow go to the future somehow, like these kids would look at the children of today and be like, what the they'd be like, it's like they would feel like grown men. Like these kids would like have probably like uh the inner character of like 50-year-old men who are alive now. Do you know what I mean? And the thing was, they didn't know better, so they accepted. You see? But how many of these kids had dreams? How many of these kids wanted to be more than where they found themselves in? So you see, we can't even define people by a moment. Imagine one of these kids became the prime minister or something. We are breathing, and there is light everywhere. And we need them both. We need light as a light. Oh my God, light is the mind's air. Light is the mind's air. The body needs air to breathe. The mind needs light to be. Needs something, some reference, some sensory input. So we can say our mind is breathing light. And our body's intaking oxygen. Such a beautiful story. So that's the thing, right? It's like I'm asking myself, okay, we look at the world, bunch of creatures, most of the creatures on this human beings on this planet, they're intimidated by their own minds of the world. I'll tell you the story. I was a very shy person in high school and very quiet, silent, kind of more like just eyes in the room than anything. But I remember there was this there was this specific girl who I couldn't stop, like she was so pretty to me, and in my mind I had in some sense idolized her in some way. I didn't even know her, I hadn't spoken to her, but it was like in my mind I had seen her in such a higher light that when she even came to talk to me, I was so nervous. I had intimidated myself out of actually what was there, you know. That means my own interpretation of the situation was limiting me from actually seeing how the situation was, and I feel that's what I mean when a lot of people, they're just like, you see, it's like when you think of the concept of a follower and you think about, are followers only in religion? Everybody is following something. And if there's nothing to follow, your own attention becomes your leader. That means if you were on an island, then your mind sets the bar high. That means it's like when there's comfort around, yeah, people can just chill. But when it's an intense situation, nobody's stupid in an emergency. Now imagine if you could have that emergency alertness around all the time, but not feeling the emergency. Just having that alertness though. What I mean by this is there is something in kindness that does something to attention. I don't know, there's something in simplicity where complexity doesn't know what to do. When something is too simple, it's like it has no content to engage, you know? It's kind of like someone asking you something and you not responding. And the person's like, why aren't you responding? And the person's like, I don't have an opinion. Literally, I have no additional comment, you know? That's this power of simplicity. In order for complexity to touch it, it has to simplify. Therefore, complexity won't risk itself changing to become simple. This is why simplicity wins. This is why Leonardo da Vinci says simplicity is the most ultimate sophistication. Because society is happening at a certain speed. And the whole thing of me showing you those kids in like London back in the day, it's like it was normal to wear top hats. Everybody had to wear a top hat. If you didn't wear a hat, you weren't considered a man. You weren't considered a human being. You weren't like separate from the animals. But then we came to a point where we got rid of our hats, you know. Now, if people don't wear a top hat, you know, nobody gets offended. But there was a day where somebody would be like, "How dare you enter this building without a hat? Go wear a hat, man. Go wear a hat and come back." It would like kick the guy out of the bank, you know. It's like, "How dare you step into this establishment without a top hat on?" It's like, "What are we, chopped liver here?" Oh man. It seems like people just open their eyes. They become a character in the story. They declare an outcome and they just run towards that. And everybody is like seeking the truth of their own eyes. Yet we're in the same world and we have to build the same advanced civilization. It's like everybody wants to do what they want to do. But how can we then do what the civilization wants to do? What the civilization needs. That means in life, you know, it's kind of like the person receives, then expresses. If the person just receives, they're going to feel something's off. If the person just expresses, they're going to feel something's off. You know, we have to be careful. You know, this is why I found the best way to speak about languages as a technology. Because the yogis were making it too hollow, too rendering it too meaningless. And in ancient times, we were rendering it too meaningless. Now we're rendering it too meaningful. Language is everything, you know. We're just, you know, waiting for people to say the right things, you know. Do you know what I mean? So it's like we have become language obsessed. It's like first we wanted objects, now we want subjects, and even surpassing subjects we want behaviors, and surpassing behaviors we want the outcome without the work. That means we are actually like, imagine we have teleportation, imagine there's a teleportation device, and this is chaotic. This is a chaotic idea, guys. But imagine there's a teleportation device that glitches. The first commercialized teleportation device, you know, it glitches, and the person is endlessly between two locations, instantly, every second teleporting. You know, what would happen to consciousness? What happens to a person who endlessly puts their head up and down from water? Imagine you're in a swimming pool, you put your head in the water, you bring your head up. You shouldn't do this like constantly, but what tends to happen is that the person gets tired. So we have to say that the truth of man is limited to the energy levels he has to ask the truth clearly. Sometimes communication does feel like throwing something to me. Effort feels like a push. It's like here's the code. If you push your own life, you don't suffer. If you want your life to be pulled, you may suffer. You may. Really, it depends on what the person wants. For me, I asked that for myself. I asked, what do I want in this world? And I realized I don't have an answer. Because the one asking the question is unknown. That means it's like the only thing I would say is of true value is to just know what was going on before the eyes have transitioned from the way they are. I would say knowledge shouldn't be an accumulation. What are we, like, trying to backpack our information? I'll tell you, it's like knowledge has to do with how much signal this antenna got before the antenna was no more. That means I would say it's like, here's the thing. Imagine somebody tells you, would you rather want like a library, or would you want one sentence that tells you exactly what's going on in this earth, or would you want a library of endless books of what has gone on so far on this earth? You know? I'm trying to say it's like you reach a point where the experience is prioritized over the subjective landscape, which at best, what? You can stare at a concept and then you move on. I don't know, like, what else can happen with language? I mean, if you stare at language too long, you become it, by the way. There was a scene in Lord of the Rings where Frodo and Sam are moving past this weird swamp, where there's faces in the swamps or whatever. And if they look at these faces too long, they get pulled by it. What it is? It would look like you can totally see how Tolkien was inspired by the idea of the, you can say, mythological creature, the siren. Do you know? Those mermaids that were like half beautiful woman, half like, I don't know. They were like a creature. They were a vicious creature. They weren't like a person. You know? So there was something that if you looked at something too long, you would be defined by it. You know? If you were in a room that was red every day, the walls were red, people would ask you, what's your, what color are you most comfortable with? You'd suddenly say red, even though, let's say you're outside, you'd be like, I don't know, man, there's something about the color red. Every day you've been living in a red room, for example, or any color, any concept-based view. This may be a bit of an absurd idea, but it's like thinking if a cell phone became conscious and was like, who am I? Imagine the cell phone declared itself as its own individual and was like, who am I? And it would study its evolution, its design, and it would see that it was not built for itself. It's as if what is designed is never designed just for the self. The self is just an extraction point. We are extracting identification with the moment as this biological creature that navigates itself in accordance to the attention that's free. That means your freedom is based on your definition of freedom, you know? Pretty much, guys, I'm just saying if that cell phone became conscious, and it branded itself, it defined itself, it would never understand its design. It would never understand why. It couldn't. It couldn't possibly. It wouldn't have an additional reference point. That means even though you could, it's like, you know what it is? It's like seeing a giant spaceship in front of you, but you have no idea whose it is. You know? It's like, whose spaceship is this? You know, it's like, this is my doorway, in front of my doorway, my part of my driveway. You know, so many people are inspired by knowledge, you know, and they want to know, and they go and they go, and they finally realize that we don't know anything. That is one of the most incredible truths in a changing world. It's as if what secret? You know, what secrets can there be? The secrets are just in the mind. One can think they can communicate. One can think the whole moment is a communication of thought. We can even say there is static truths, still truths, and moving truths. Truths that can't be true unless there's movement first. And truths that regardless if there's movement, they're true. Because on some level, like who's speaking to you right now is simultaneously being light and air. It's like the periodic table is speaking to you right now. You know, isn't it phenomenal? Just imagine atoms fast forwarding into such a state of complexity where as different beings they're communicating to each other on the phone. That means when Alexander Graham Bell made the phone, that was when, oh my God, I could say even there's two types of teleportation. There is a teleportation from one point to another point. There's a teleportation from an individual point to a collective point, to all the points. I think the mind is acquainted with teleportation. The body, it still has to take the bus. Guys, this episode is it can be so long that most likely I'm gonna forget, but if anyone in the future cares, this title is Sunlight Breathing. Just intuitively I could tell you there can be 10 hours of discussion on it. What it is we just have to build a new culture where the children who open their eyes they're just opening their eyes in a better place. And what it is you shield the future generations by actually it's a good thing, I think. I think many parents who think that making their children gentle is a bad thing. I will tell you, it's like, imagine, here's the perfect thing. It's like, I will tell you, the inner realms feels like you can sit somewhere, close your eyes, and envision yourself holding a bow and an arrow and pulling back the bow, and the release of the arrow is like speech. Sometimes I'll tell you, it's very unique. When I speak, you guys don't see this because it's like there's no video. But what I'm doing is I have a pen or something in my hand, you know, usually a pen though. And what I do is as I'm speaking like a orchestra conductor, I'm the pen moves. I'm telling you, there's something about all movement that is mind sourced. The source of it is not a physical thing. Physicality is a glimpse. It's literally putting the video game on pause for a second and looking at it. But what is actually going on with our inner event is the ability of the mind to have multiple bodies. That's what probabilities means. That before you do something, you're seeing different angles of how it can be done. Your attention is really what's piloting here. That means there are two types of human beings on this, you can say, in the world for now. Those who think they are thought and those who know they are attention. And I don't know how for this long, people have been going on thinking they're just a thought. Yeah, this is me. It's like, yeah, like it's like when you read the biography of a person and be like, yeah, right, man. It's like these are like fragments of the person's life. You know how long the journey of life is, how deep it is. Sometimes when I look at these philosophical quotes, the best thing is, here's the thing. The coolest thing is some people listen for the concepts, but some people listen to see what the speaker is seeing. When I look at certain philosophers back in the day, I'm constantly trying to see how was this being looking at the world. And you know what I realize? Each person is their own pilot. Will Durant has this quote where he says, Knowledge is the eye of desire and can become the pilot of the soul. It is now a time for multidimensional creaturehood. That means creature plus unknown possibility. And if the person can truly see what they are, I'll tell you, one of the best ways for a person to um, remember their true nature is to see pictures of them, their own self when they were young. What I mean is, like, when I looked at myself when I was young, I'm like, look at this fool. There was such happiness and so little reason. Now there's a lot of reason, and I'm glad the happiness is I understand. It's like when you realize you're not a thought, you don't need a reason to be happy, actually. You realize it's an energetic, it's energetic. It's feeling based. People have to realize whatever you do is creating a memory. And if we are a collective mind, that means it's going to become important how 8 billion human beings are creating memories for the future generations, which is the echo of their own genetical lines or whatnot. There's the story during a period, during, you can say, the 6th century. It's not per se a religious story, it's a story set in a religious context, though. And what's happening in the story is that there's this man, this very religious man, and he suddenly sees who he believes there's only one God. And he's walking and he suddenly sees a bunch of people are worshiping this tree. Literally, a bunch of people are gathered around a tree and they're worshiping this tree. And this person is like, what is this? These people are worshiping a tree. And he's like, I'm not going to let this happen. He gets an axe and he goes there and he tries to cut the tree. He's like, these people for the rest of their life, they're just sitting by this tree. You know? So he sees some falsehood and he goes to cut the tree. When he goes to cut the tree, he's doing it out of the sort of care. He's not hurting the people. He's getting rid of the what has possessed their attention. You know? This person gets an axe and he's like, all right, I'm not going to let these people worship a tree. And he goes and he's about to cut the tree. Then the archetype of evil manifests in front of him. The fallen manifests in front of this person, the archetype of evil. What tends to happen is, what tends to happen? What am I saying? Like, what happens in the story? What happens in the story is The guy, pretty much, it's like the devil. The devil appears in front of him and says, I'm not going to let you cut this tree. And the guy says, I'm going to cut this tree. And they go into a fight, physical fight. Okay? And so it's like the archetype of evil through human form. So the guy beats the other evil force, you know? And so what happens? What happens is the guy goes to cut the tree, and there's something in certain religious texts that it said that it's like uh, um, uh, evil is drawn to evil attacks your character first, you know, something like that. So right before this guy who's defeated the devil and he's about to cut the tree, right? He's about to cut this tree, and suddenly the devil says, "No, don't cut the tree. Have these coins. I'll put these 3 coins, 3 gold coins every night underneath your door, behind your door, you know, and you'll never have to worry about your finances or anything ever again." The guy's character is drawn to that weakness. And the guy says, 3 gold coins, that's a lot of money. He's like, okay, the guy doesn't cut the tree. He goes back. He goes home and he waits at night. There's a knock behind his door. He opens the door, 3 gold coins. He takes it. He's like, okay, all right. You know, the contract was like, you know, agreed upon or something, you know. So what happens then is like the next night again. There's a knock. There's the gold coins. Then the third night there's the gold. There's another knock. Do you know? Sorry, the third night there is no knock. And so the guy's like, "What is this? I'm gonna go." And the thing said every night, so I'm gonna go and chop this tree down. So the guy goes to chop the tree down, and again, though people are still worshiping the tree, and so he goes to chop the tree down, and again, the archetype of evil appears. And the archetype of evil appears and says, I'm not going to let you cut this tree. And they start fighting. As they start fighting, this time, the archetype of evil through human form wins. He wins. The evil wins and puts him down, and the guy's shocked. He's like, how is it 3 days ago I was stronger than you, now you're stronger than me? And this is the whole point of just why this metaphor exists in the collective unconscious, where it was said, or or how the story goes on, is that the archetype of evil looks at the guy and he's like, buddy, at first you were doing it because you were doing it for your truth. You actually cared for those people. The second time you came to chop the tree, it's because you didn't get money. You didn't get the coins. That means the whole point was the quality of your attention to what is true. That's pretty much the moral of the story, guys. These are all archetypes. These are all language. Language personified, pretty much. We see ourselves through objects, through subjects, and even beyond that, beyond the universal order and chaos. Light gives us the context. The air is the most immediate concept. We need air to be a self. We need light to see a world. So if the person is aware of their breathing, they're aware of their attention as they breathe, they're aware of their space as their attention is in while they breathe, As the breathing, the easiest thing to do is what you do is like you make your breathing, like you visualize ocean waves as you listen to your inhalation and exhalation. As you get those ocean waves going, that stabilizes with your breath. That becomes an image. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. Like, um, imagine like this is something I do sometimes where I sleep, and before I sleep I listen to my breath, and with my breath, as with it's like I'm following the inhale exhale, literally like a cat following the laser beam, you know. Like I'm following the inhale exhale, and with every inhale and exhale it's a scan. It's literally like the whole body is getting scanned. The oxygen that's entering the system is making you instantly aware. You can actually notice um, your body kind of the subtlety of of the biological phenomena change with every inhale and exhale. So what it is you make the inhalation and exhalation. You listen, and for without any opinion, you just watch like a film. You're watching your own body, but your eyes are closed, and you're just listening to your own breathing. And as you listen to your breathing, and you can stabilize that with an image of ocean waves, then it becomes the breathing becomes second nature to the attention, even though your whole body's asleep and your eyes are closed in the bed. And then your attention can move in the inner realms. But the whole point is you shouldn't actually move too much in the inner realms before sleep, or you can't sleep. You know, and and people are like, Mr. Within, you have such effort. You have such effort and dedication, you know. Yeah, yeah, that's true too, you know. This is not an idea I would suggest. Like, it's not, people shouldn't see this as wisdom, but it was just an interesting statement that I heard from 50 Cent, where they asked him, when do you sleep? And he said, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And that doesn't mean physically you shouldn't sleep. It means that uh, your mind shouldn't be asleep, even if your body is asleep. That means when you wake up, your mind has uh, strategized enough in the general's tent, which is your inner realms. You can see it as your inner studio, inner office, you know. When somebody asks you a question, you just take your time, go sit in that inner office, and I'm like, okay, let's go. You know, people have to care for the new more than they care for what has been, because we have seen the past. It's already past. A species in denial of its own multidimensional greatness. We live today doing simple things, thinking that they are complex, not realizing the amount of complexity that will happen. You know, I'm just waiting. For me, it's like, it's a strange moment. There was a scene in, I don't know if the film was called Attila or something. Like, in that film, there was a scene where there was like I don't know, the film was called Mongol. And in the film Mongol, like the main protagonist is at the end just in this prison, and he's waiting. He's waiting. And this very, what do you call it? This kind of like yogi looking kind of guy, shaman looking kind of guy comes up, and he says, I've seen a vision. You know, he comes and says this to Attila, who's in the prison. And he says, I've seen a vision that you will bring a storm here, but when you bring your storm, do not destroy and disturb the temple. You know? And he says that, just this very strange thing. And at the same time, it was a goosebump moment for Attila. I would say he saw a sign of his inner realms. Now, what happens is, I don't know. I don't remember how actually Attila gets out of there, but the storm happens and Attila is freed and he's waiting. He's just waiting for this storm about to come, right? Now, for me, I'm telling you, I'm feeling that, but not for a storm of breaking, a storm of the next wave of Renaissance like design, where the designers of the world are jealous of how the other person is not greater than them. Do you see? That's that. It's I see this high speed. It's like this wind that's going to come, and just suddenly people are going to wake up. This wind back in the day, I think it was in Hafez's poetry. It was in somewhere I read where it was like the philosopher would suddenly realize something in the middle of the night and get a lantern, run in the streets, people. You know, there's light beyond the lantern. Yeah. Oh man, that's how podcasting happened back in the day. You know. Oh god. All right, guys. Just to land the flight of this episode. Is sunlight breathing? No. The watcher is just being. When the person doesn't, let's say if life was seen as binary 0 1, that means all the people on the planet are pretty much people who are putting effort, they're generating some force from within themselves towards the outer realms, or some people who are not putting effort, pretty much. Effort is an advanced mode of being. Not all beings have an ability to have effort. I mean, you look at and all the animals in nature, they don't have an ability to concentrate. I mean, think about it. I just noticed this. You look at a mountain lion. The mountain lion maybe goes where the gazelle is, eats the gazelle, is done with it, and then goes back. We are the only animal that is, I would say, I mean, there is habits. I'm not saying like there isn't. There is. We are in a cyclical world, but I'm just saying we are uniquely that animal in nature that was like, yo, I've had it with nature, and we built concrete over it, and we started living in accordance to the laws of a separated intelligence. That means this is one of those great questions where if the human being right now was put into nature, had to live a natural lifestyle. Let's say there was this law that forced people to 50% of, like half the year, they are not allowed to live in the city. Anybody who's living in the city more than half the year has to go outside the city. Imagine there's a law like that, you know, where people are forced to go into nature. It's like by law you gotta go into nature and meditate. Oh man, sorry guys, it's pretty late here. I'm becoming a bit silly, but I'm just trying to say that do not fear nature. It is your roots. My ancestors is literally the my I only have like like what's hilarious? I can't see my second earliest ever ancestor, but I can see the first earliest ancestor. It is the planet. This planet is us. But we are that part of the planet that has managed to go into its own room, and in its own room is finding an ability to surpass nature. That means, what if to us technology is not divine, but from a universal, even you can say multidimensional perspective, it's the most divine thing that can happen in nature, the unnatural. It's phenomenal. It sometimes gives me a goosebumps where I feel like so many other animals on this planet, right? When you think about it, but why haven't none of them evolved to the sophistication of man? Why was it the only creature that had fingers suddenly was found access? You know, it's as if it's like the motivation of evolution is like the future, is it not? We're all trying to survive for the future. But the strange thing is, before the creature evolved to be able to even have a concept of time, what could evolution be? There's too many mysteries. This is why we are a civilization of artists. We can act, you know, like anything else, but it's all, you know, it can instantly be meaningless, it can instantly be meaningful. The way the force of life moves in the moment is really, I would say, the value of it. Because mistakes are made, you know, I there's times where I just close my eyes and I feel like, it's been heavy, like the whole lifetime feels heavy. And then there's nights when I sleep where I'm like, how dare I see it as heavy? And that's when I will tell you, it's strange, but the mind is the guardian of the body. The collective is the guardian of the individual. An advanced civilization is the greatest effort of breathing sunlight. From static realms, we are moving to the dynamic. From being drops, we're becoming rivers of minds. Now, as the minds begin their work, right now the bodies have to work. But when every mind begins its work, I will tell you, it's like literally like a higher, not a higher standard of living, a standard of the absolute. You see, in the outer realms, there's nothing absolute. In the inner realms, the eyes of man and God are the same. The secret of the shaman was that there never was a shaman there. Nature is universal intelligence. We are just an instrument. We are the telephone of the cosmos. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. The relationships of light and breath, just wonder about it yourself. Everybody deserves, it's like your kind of birthright to wonder why everything is here, why it's happening, how it's happening. When you ask these bigger questions, then people don't, then you don't need inspiration. You take as far steps as you can in your mind, and then the body sees all the probabilities, then acts. And I'm using the word mind and body, but I'll tell you, these are all words. You're an experiential event. Get to know the experiential event. That surpasses all ideological insight. The living experiential event. That means if civilization was built on a giant turtle's back, like literally like communicate with the turtle. Like realize the world is alive, not just in your eyes. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'll be in the Discord server. There isn't a specific topic for tonight, but if people ask questions, I'll be there for some time. 10 minutes probably. And guys, one last idea. This idea of being a hunter-gatherer of your inner realms has to come from you wondering about the mysteries of something that only you can see. And then when you have seen it enough or you feel it can have a value to the tribe, then the person can, from the first stage of how the idea arrives as an inner image, then it's brought down onto paper or vocalized, then it's built. Then the invention is made. The invention of action, or the invention of, like, if you actually invent something. Like, really, the light bulb went on in Edison's head first, and then he, on paper probably, and then, into the world. So, thanks for listening, guys. Blessings.